Welcome to the eIntegrator video on how to set up the eIntegrator with QuickBooks. This is only part of the available features, and you should consult with our documentation on how to use some of the other advanced features. You will see on our screen here that there are many tabs. We have a accounts and items tabs, and these are the accounts and items on how the program is going to create the transactions using your items and your accounts. We usually start with items. When an item comes in from your e-commerce system, we have the option on whether or not that item should be added to QuickBooks or not. If you want them added, then you click on the add them if not in QuickBooks. Now, to add them, the screens will be very similar to what you need to do when you're adding items in your QuickBooks. So if we were to add an item in QuickBooks, it would ask you for the type of item to add, the item name and number, and so forth, including an account. This is the same in our eIntegrator. So if you wanted to add an item, if it's not in QuickBooks, you have to specify what type of item you want to add, and depending upon the type, what accounts to use. Either income account, for inventory you might want a cost of goods account and an assets account. If a product is going to be purchased and sold as a non-inventory, you might also want an expense account. Now, sticking to items, if you have shipping charges and you're using QuickBooks desktop feature, not online, would normally use one of the items in QuickBooks as a shipping item or freight item and so forth. What we have in our drop down comes from your QuickBooks, and these are either service items or other charges. If you're using one of the other types of items for your shipping, then you can just type it in. We also have items for handling, other charges, discounts. Again, a discount is a discount item in QuickBooks, not just any old item. It is a discount. We support donations if that's what your cart supports, and so forth. In addition to adding items in QuickBooks, if they're not there, we have some other items that can be used. In other words, if we have an item code that comes in as blank, we can specify what item to use. Or we can specify a item to use if it's unknown. We would recommend something like using 00 unknown item so you can easily find it later. We also have items for use fees, and this usually applies to things like in Amazon, and you can just type in the fee item you want to use there. Also, when it comes to items and accounts, the next popular thing is your customers. Now, for customers, you might find that there are many ways a QuickBooks customer job name is created. We can use many of these depending upon your cart, and you have to look at your individual cart to find out exactly how or what you have available to you. There is an issue with names, customer names, in that cannot be duplicated in QuickBooks. The same name cannot be used as a vendor or employee or other name. So therefore, to avoid what we call the John Smith problem, where you might have multiple John Smiths coming in across the world, you might want to make the name something like first, comma, last, and then the phone number, or last, comma, first, and the phone number, as long as your e-commerce system does separate the first and last names. There are many options, including company and so forth, and you can look at these, and these are discussed in our documentation. Now, another thing that we can use is use one generic name for everything. This cuts down on the number of names in your QuickBooks, makes it smaller and faster, and if you're not using Enterprise, you might indeed hit the limits that QuickBooks has, and they vary per year version. You can put one generic customer in there, like it might be web orders or something like this. Of course, web sales has to exist in your QuickBooks. If you do not want to use generic customers, but you do want to keep track of each customer, then you can set the switch that says add if not in QuickBooks, or we can update the customer if it is in QuickBooks, or even make him active if he is inactive, and that applies to QuickBooks Desktop, not QuickBooks Online. Also, we want to tell the integrator what type of transaction to create. That can be an invoice, it can be a sales receipt, sales order, estimate, depending upon your version of QuickBooks. Now, most of those are very similar. You have to have the Premier Edition or better of QuickBooks to do sales orders, and it's not currently supported by QuickBooks Online. You should check with your QuickBooks documentation on the difference between the different transaction types, but in general, a sales receipt is a single transaction that represents both, like an invoice and a payment all in one. So it's a sold transaction. An invoice, you would probably have to do a payment later. Now, the integrator can also do payments at the same time if that's what you chose to do. On our accounts and items, you can tell it to do a payment or not via the drop downs here. Now, there are many other functions in the program. Most of them are a little bit too complex to explain in a video, and it would take a long time, but I suggest you consult with our operations PDF manual, any addendums that are pertain to your individual e-commerce system, and also take advantage of our help and our free forum that you can get to from our atex.com website. Right on top it says forum. Some other quick notes. The normal default is to use the e-commerce system's order number as the reference number, a sales order number or an invoice number. That can be changed here by just checking or unchecking this button. For those complex order IDs, like from Amazon, we can split them into different pieces and just use part of that, and so forth. If in your QuickBooks you're using sub-items, in other words, you have a category or supplier, and underneath that the individual item, then you'd want to check the sub-items to items. Now, this requires that we do a lookup of all your items in order to find out the full name and so forth, and that will require some additional settings in that we would have to get all the items when we first start up. That takes a little bit longer. So the normal default is for us not to do that. But in case that is something you need to do, we do have that support available. Also, the integrator can add other things like methods and terms and so forth, and that's on our additional tab, and you can see them here. Add methods, that would be like shipping method, payment method if you're using them, classes, and so forth. On terms, we can add the term's name, but terms are usually a little bit more complicated than that, and that usually doesn't come from your e-commerce system. We're talking about things like discount days and discount amounts, but we can certainly add the name so the order does get imported into QuickBooks, and it's easier to change or delete than it is to add new. There are several other options like setting it to print, setting it to email. Now, the integrator does not print, it does not do emails, but it certainly can set the flag to do either one. That would be the little checkbox in QuickBooks on the bottom that says to be emailed or to be printed. There are other options in the program again, but that would be too much for this video. The next video you should look at will be the one on setting up your e-commerce system or what we call a store in the integrator. Thank you again for looking at our integrator video for setting up with QuickBooks, and we hope you take advantage of our facilities, the forum,